I wanted to start off back in 2006 when the state legislature passed and Governor Schwarzenegger signed AB 32, which was a bill that requires the largest emitters in the state, global warming emitters who emit more than 25,000 tons a year of global warming pollution, to be capped and to reduce that pollution back down to 1990 levels by 2020. It's about a 12% reduction from where we are now in terms of emission reductions. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about why this bill was passed in the first place. One of the factors that really motivated legislators at the time was information about global warming. And the decade that we're in right now is the hottest decade on record ever. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere now are the highest they have ever been in the last 800,000 years, probably most likely in the last 15 million years. And scientists here in California spent a couple of years studying how global warming may impact California and produced a massive report on how some of our most iconic treasures, our wine production, our Sierra snowpack, may be impacted by global warming. And I'm going to go through a couple of those impacts in a second, but what they realized is that California is uniquely vulnerable to climate change, which is happening actually faster than we even thought back in 2006. And not only are we uniquely vulnerable, we're also uniquely positioned to take a lead role in addressing global warming by coming up with innovative policies that can then be picked up by other states and other countries, actually, to hopefully lead to a global effort to reduce global warming pollution. And little did we know at the time how much that leadership would actually be needed. So just some of the key impacts that the scientists discovered and presented to legislators back in 2006. One is extreme heat days. If global warming is not curbed, if you look at those red bars, those are the impacts we would see in a business as usual trajectory where emissions are not curbed. Extreme heat is increasing in LA up to 120 days a year, a third of the year in extreme heat. And this kind of heat, has a number of different impacts, health impacts to the elderly, but also raising, air conditioning rates and raising electricity use, which then results in more pollution. Warming temperatures also make conditions more conducive for smog formation. So when you have regular particulates and nitrogen oxide released in the presence of warmth and sunlight, that can be cooked into smog, ground level ozone, which is a cause of respiratory illness and cardiac problems. And so we're seeing, as temperatures rise, we're seeing more days conducive to smog formation in the state. And in the two areas, LA and the San Joaquin Valley, 75 to 85% increase in days conducive to ozone. And those are places that already have the worst smog problems in the country. They also looked at snowpack. This is by the end of the century. They're projecting that because warming temperatures will cause, they won't cause changes in precipitation per se, but they will cause changes in the nature of that precipitation. So more precipitation coming down as rain instead of snow, and that rain running off more quickly. Our snowpack is like a big reservoir in the sky. It's holding that liquid water up there and releasing it slowly over the summer. If that's running off right away, we don't have as much water to help us with our agricultural production and drinking water in Southern California. So this slide, it's showing 20% remaining of the snowpack if warming is not curbed. This is actually for a medium warming range scenario. If we look at an actual business as usual scenario, a high warming range scenario, less than 10% of the snowpack they're projecting would remain. And then the last impact I'll mention is wildfire. Yeah?
These are all in 100 years? Or
Yeah, this is all by the end of the century. So runoff and snow versus rain also affects wildfires, because if more water is running right off and not sinking in slowly through snow, a lot of the forest and chaparral areas in California will become drier, setting up conditions for more wildfire. And so the scientists are predicting, increases in wildfire, which, as you know, has health impacts, but also releases more carbon dioxide. So it's sort of a vicious cycle. And back in 2007, I thought the statistic was interesting. In 1 week, wildfires in Southern California released 8 million metric tons of CO2, which is equal to 1/4 of the monthly total of all CO2 emitted from cars, trucks, factories, power plants, every other source in California. So it's a lot of pollution that can be released through these wildfires. So those were some of the reasons that motivated lawmakers to pass AB 32. Fast forward 4 years to where we are today. AB 32 is set to be implemented in 2012. The final piece of the AB 32 regulation is coming out tomorrow, actually, and will go to the California Air Resources Board in December. So it's all on the verge of happening. And this is when we're seeing the oil companies come in and fund these ballot propositions to stop the program. So Prop 26 is sort of a stealth initiative that sort of snuck up on us and has gotten a lot of money just in the last few weeks. They're up to $16 million now. Most of this is, the number one donor is Chevron. They've donated $4 million. The other large backers are Philip Morris and the California Chamber of Commerce. It's a conglomeration of oil, tobacco, and alcohol companies who've come together to propose a law that basically redefines taxes. And what it does is it takes what are currently considered fees and turns them into taxes. Okay, what difference does this make? Well, a fee can be passed with a simple majority. A tax, it takes 2/3 vote of the legislature or 2/3 vote of a local populace in order to enact a tax. So it's a lot more difficult to get a tax enacted. In the legislature, it's virtually impossible to get a 2/3 vote on anything. So the kind of fees that it's redefining as taxes are fees that currently are being assessed on entities that cause some sort of social, public health, or environmental harm. So a fee on cigarettes to fund programs to prevent smoking or deal with the impacts of smoking, for example, would be one. Fees that are used to prevent and clean up oil spills, clean up hazardous waste, electronic recycling for when your computer is finished and you want to send it in, fees to protect people from toxic pesticides. All of those kind of things would be, they wouldn't be, if they are in existence now, they're not blocked, they're just not able to be raised. And new fees that would be in these categories would be blocked. So one of the fees that we think is in jeopardy under Prop 26 is a fee on carbon pollution, which is part of the program that has been proposed to reach our AB 32 goals. And so we think that Prop 26 could have a big impact on our state's efforts to reduce global warming pollution, and at the very least tie things up in court for years and years and years, because the proposition is very vaguely worded. Getting back to like the cement and glass and some of the heavy emitting industries, the Air Resources Board, we won't know until, actually, we won't know the details until probably tonight at midnight when all this is getting released. There's 1,200 pages of regulation that will be released at midnight tonight, so we'll know for sure. But what we've been hearing from different workshops and proposals along the way is that CARB is planning to freely allocate a large number of permits, allowances to the high energy intensity or trade exposed industries like cement and glass and some of the refineries. So they're actually going to be getting some portion of their permits for free, and they're not going to have to buy them in an auction. So that's part of the way that the state is trying to soften the impact of the program, and that those allowances, we hope, eventually will be more and more auctioned over time. The free allowance distribution will decrease over time as those industries either clean up or transform into something that's cleaner. Yeah, well, there's two issues, I guess, with that. First, that study that's widely touted by the opponents of clean energy progress was basically excoriated by academics who looked at it and looked at the methodology and found that it was a very flawed methodology. The second issue is this issue of feed-in tariffs that's happening in Spain and all across Europe, where ratepayers are subsidizing solar development and paying more for their electricity to subsidize solar. And Europe has been in a very interesting experiment with feed-in tariffs where different countries are doing it different ways and setting different tariffs based on different factors, and some are public, some are going through the utilities, and we've seen a mix of results. And I think people are still figuring out where to set those fees so that it is cost effective, but still getting clean energy in the ground and built. And Germany is actually, one of the leaders. They have developed, this cloudy, rainy country has developed more solar than California. And California is also considering a feed-in tariff and looking at those examples. And one of the things that some of the studies here have shown is that for every job that is lost in one of the fossil fuel industries, more jobs are, up to 50 more jobs can be created in the economy writ large because of the energy savings that are coming from that shift in energy source. So there's a lot of different numbers and speculation about job creation and loss. What the economists who have studied this particular AB 32 program have consensus around, and this includes peer review by Robert Stavins at Harvard and Larry Goulder at Stanford, and a whole array of economists who are climate energy economists. Their consensus is this is probably going to have very little impact on the economy either way. It could have a very positive benefit and net job gain, could have a slightly negative impact, but either way, it's probably going to net out with not much impact while allowing our economy to grow robustly at the same time. So we can get the emission reductions with a benefit or with basically a neutral impact is what most are saying.
I'd like to ask a broader economic question, not just about jobs in California. You started with some slides of warmer days and reduced snowpack. With the failure of cap and trade to pass in the United States nationally, California is sort of the last stand, at least for the time being. What are the possible economic consequences if there is no program and global warming were to accelerate? Those externalities for fossil fuel use have a cost. And is that being factored into the debate, or is it just we don't care, we don't want to pick up the tab for that?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, that the cost of inaction has not really been factored into the debate at all, and we know that it'll be huge. I mean, as we showed earlier, our agricultural industry could be hugely affected. Our coastline, real estate, huge industries in California could be very negatively impacted, and that has not been factored in to any of these economic analyses.